Well, they're pretty impressive machines, and they're never going to be built again. So, it is our aviation history, and that's what fought for our country and our freedom in World War II. I mean, we still got aeroplanes from World War One, but we've got to keep the World War II machines going.
G'day everyone, welcome to episode 204 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. The podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. I'm your host, Trent Robinson, and thank you for joining me. Welcome to everyone who's new to the episodes, if you haven't joined us before, and welcome to all my Patreon supporters. We've got a fantastic episode today for you, and we're going to get straight into it. Well, today's episode is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. If you've been to an air show in Australia lately, chances are you've seen this man in action, pushing his wolf pits to its limits, delivering precise aerobatics, and displaying pristine warbirds and putting on a show with his team that leaves the crowd absolutely speechless. But behind those displays is a lifetime of work, from the early days of learning to fly, mastering aerobatics, entering competitions, and building one of the most impressive warbird fleets in the country, and now performing on some of the biggest stages in the world, including EAA AirVenture Oshkosh. We'll have a chat about what goes into an aerial display, the reality of running it all, and importantly, we'll talk about legacy, flying alongside his son Jett, and what the future looks like. It's going to be a great conversation, and really pleased to welcome to the podcast Paul Bennet. Paul, thanks for joining me.
Hello. Good to see you again, Trent.
You too, mate. And it was fantastic to catch up with you in Darwin here and for the Super V8s and obviously in Scone. I know you had a few issues getting up here, mate, but it was a fantastic display. I know everybody absolutely loved it. There's been some fantastic footage uploaded, hasn't there?
There has, yeah. It seemed to be pretty well received. So hopefully we get an invite to come back again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, well, we'll talk about all that a bit later on. But look, let's get straight into it because we've got so much to unpack here. And take us back a bit. What sort of first pulled you into aviation in the first place?
I guess my grandfather was, he was into aviation. My father was into it. So that sort of, I guess that's an easy way to get started. You end up hanging around airports and flying clubs and sitting in aeroplanes. And, I went for a ride when I was probably one, maybe even less. And so, I guess it finds its way into your blood early on. And so then we used to fly away for Christmas holidays and stuff to Bundaberg or wherever. And, my dad would hire the Cherokee or Archer or whatever from the local aero club in Taree, and off we'd go. So, that was pretty cool. And I guess the easiest way to get into aviation when you're young is to fly model aircraft. So, as soon as I could walk, I was flying control line, and then soon after that I was flying radio control. And my father was, right into that stuff. And so then I got right into it, and that was a pretty good road. And then when I moved to Newcastle, I guess I knew that I would always want to become a pilot, but I wanted to get a few bucks behind me, so I didn't sort of like stop and start. And I was lucky enough I was flying models with one of my good friends, and he'd recently gone solo in Phil Unicum's Pitts S2A, so he said, "Come on, I'll take you for a ride." So we did, and that was on a Sunday, and then Monday morning I was at the Aero Club trying to get my license. So
that was it, yeah.
Yeah, that was it. And we joke about how much money he's cost me now because we're still good friends. And, he's got a Jols 202 and an MX2. And, yeah, we were good friends back then, both flying model aeroplanes. And we both raced pylon together, and we still are good friends. So, yeah, it's been an interesting road.
Yeah, it is indeed, and a lovely guy who's a good friend as well, and doing great things. So was there a moment when you felt that this was going to be a bit more than just the hobby, that it might be making a bit of a career out of this, and especially in the aerobatic airshow scene?
Well, I didn't so I knew I wanted to do aerobatics from basically as soon as I started because of that pit special ride. So then I went and did my license, but as soon as I could, I went over to Phil Unicum to start learning to fly the pits, and so I knew that I wanted to do aerobatics, I guess. I mean, like flying, I knew flying was great in general, and I was flying an Eagle 150 and a few of those type machines, but I really liked the aerobatics. So then it was about competing in the aerobatic championships, which I think is a good way to. I think it's the best way for a good grounding, getting the skills, being able to manipulate an aeroplane, and working your way up through the competition grades is a really good way to start. And that's what I did. That advice came from Phil Unicum, and so that's what I did. And so I won my first comp in graduate, and I worked my way up to sportsman and intermediate, advanced, unlimited. I think I won advanced in 08, I think, and unlimited in 09. And then I guess once you sort of got there, maybe some opportunities open up. And so I was doing some full-size air shows like with my RC Jetts. And then, because I bought an S1 and was competing in an S1, because I'd already won advanced, well, then I got asked, can I do a display in the S1? And then I probably around that time, the Red Bull Air Race was on in Perth. I went over there and watched it, and there was some display flying there that I thought was maybe not as good as it could be. It was 4-point rolls weren't accurate. It was a little bit sloppy, and I suppose that inspired me to go. We need to have some airshow pilots that are really fly really well and accurate. And so then I started sort of practicing an airshow routine as well as continuing on with the competition. And then it just all sort of opened up, and then I ended up flying warbirds at the same time. And I always had a passion for warbirds, but there's probably a time in your career where you think you'll never get to that point, like it's sort of like too far away. And then, there were some people in warbirds that obviously didn't want to see me get into warbirds, so they'd go out of their way to try and stop it. It can be a pretty tough road. You've got to be a pretty determined person, I suppose, to get to where you want to get to, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Look, I know what you mean with aerobatic displays and things, and I think it's fantastic the way you sort of stack that for people that are interested in getting into aeros, but which I absolutely endorse. It's the best coordination, stick rudder handling, spatial awareness training you can do, I reckon. But then moving into trying to do displays, there's a time and a place and a real certain skill set, isn't there, to have to make it look good, because we're all on the ground, and the worst judges is another pilot. But to do it safely as well, you need to have that experience, and that competition environment is a great way to get that. Getting into ALACs or your local state competitions, club competitions and stuff to build it up, isn't it?
It is, and I think it also helps the people that you associate with. So like I'd sort of through all that aerobatic training and competition, and then going to the next step, I was sort of around Phil Unicum. Like we shared a hangar, and so every day that you go to the airport, you see him, and you can have various conversations that you need to have. And I was good friends with Tom Moon. And I was good friends with Pip Borman, and I'm still good friends with Chris Peru. People that have been around for a long time that you can talk to and bounce ideas off, and you double check that you're on the right track. And you want to. I think it's something that's a little bit lacking now, is a bit of a mentorship. I sort of created my own mentorship, if you like, by going out and asking the questions to Tom Moon and Pip Borman. And I would always make sure that I wasn't sort of like cutting their grass, if you like. Like I wanted to be able to work with them. I didn't want to be like they're already established. I didn't want to be, taking air shows off them and me getting them. But it worked. It worked if we were all doing them together. Some I'd do with Pip, for example, and some I'd do with Tom, because they were gonna get the show anyway. And so it was a monoplane against a biplane, which worked. Pip was flying an edge, Tom was flying an extra, and I was flying an S1. So it wasn't like we were cutting each other's lunch. It just complemented, and we could work together. And it was good for um, them keeping an eye on me and me keeping an eye on them, and you sort of need that stuff.
Well, you do. Everyone needs feedback, irrespective of experience, whatever else. There's always debrief points. There's always things to work on, to develop, to polish, whatever. And I think, fantastic to have someone like, Chris Baru, probably one of the, the OGs of the Australian airshow market, and obviously Pip, unfortunately no longer with us, but coming across to the Red Bull there in Perth as well. I got to meet him then in his displays, but there's not that many people, is there? Do you think that there's enough room for different display pilots? Again, like you say, as long as everyone's doing different things, you've obviously got your edge there as well with Glenn there and everything. So there's definitely a diversification of the type of aerobatics and displays you're doing, because otherwise I think eventually people get bored with it. So I'd say there's plenty of room.
Well, yeah, and like I try and create the room, and for people that are, like have a look at Jett, my son. Well, I suppose that's a biased one because he's my son. I suppose he's, if he's got the ambition to end up where he wants to end up, well, then I can make it happen for him. But, like Riley McDonald, the young bloke that's flying number 4 for us now, well, I've done a lot of training with him, like a lot of instructing, his formation aerobatics, and I've coached him through the aerobatic championships. He already had a great instructor and was well mentored down there at Shell Harbour, so he already had a really good grounding, and he had the right head on his shoulders. Well, he's a young bloke that, for many years, I remember him as a hanger out down there, and he would always be at the front of the hangar when I'd taxi in something cool, a Kitty Hawk or a Spitfire or whatever. Yeah. He's always out there. He was waving as a little kid, a metre high, and now he's flying with us, and it's nice to give those opportunities and see them young blokes grow into great pilots. He flies really well. He's won advanced now twice in my aeroplane, and so we make room for him if the right people come along and they've got the right head on their shoulders and they want to, take the right path. I guess there's a lot of people that don't necessarily, they want to take the easy road, which if you want to take the easy road, that doesn't really work for me. And so I've always had the rule, which I pretty much adopted from Phil Unicum, that if you haven't won advanced in competition, you shouldn't be flying a high-performance aeroplane in an airshow, as in a high-performance aerobatic aircraft like an Extra Edge, Wolfbits, S1. And so that's the rule I've always stood by. And so, for me, Jett was never going to fly an airshow until he'd won advanced, and Riley was never going to fly an airshow until he'd won advanced. And as it turns out, he flew his first airshow at Shell Harbour there a few months ago after he's won advanced twice. So, I don't bring them in before they're ready. I make sure that we've done the training and 100% got them right. But if you don't follow those rules, you'll never get a start with me.
Yeah, well, the safety has to be paramount, and as you know, any display, keeping within your limits and the bounds. We don't need to show off. What we're doing already is already exciting and impressive, for the crowd. So that it just doesn't need to be those drives to do silly things and change things up last minute. No,
and I mean, I guess an example of that is if you're trying to do everything right and you're setting a really high bar, one of our guys has had an accident. So if you're already at a top level and you're doing a good job, there's still room for error. Clearly,
absolutely,
we've shown that. It's frustrating.
We've seen that in the Thunderbirds, haven't we? With F-16 punching out, and yeah.
It's look, it's a fact of life. Humans make mistakes. You just got to do everything in your power to minimise them.
Yeah. So how much time goes into the train? So we see about a 10-minute display or something from you, but what do you reckon goes into behind the scenes, from planning the routine to performing it? How much changes depending on where you're doing it, or are you designing it so it can pretty much go anywhere with you?
Yeah, so with a solo, like my solo is a very difficult solo. So, I've engineered that over many years. Like it's probably had a lot of similarities over 20 years, to be honest. And I change things, each year or each second year as I get better at doing figures. And so, like when I go and practice I normally take off out of Maitland, go and practice over Luscantire, and I'll fly my standard sequence. But I'm always working on new things that that I think I'd like to add to the sequence. And so at the end, once I've flown my sequence, then I go and practice my one-off figures that I've been working on, and then I just try and we can't put, when you're doing difficult things like forward flips and doing double hammerheads aren't really new anymore, but like when you're putting in, some of them gyroscopic cool tricks, you obviously got to start them up high, and you don't put them in until you've been able to repeat it 500 times. You can't bring it down until you made it really predictable. So you got to plan for when you're having your worst day, and your gates and heights have to suit your worst day, not your best day. And so when you're on your best day, you just fly better instead of and when you get, it's important that when you get more and more current and you fly every day, you don't get lower and lower and lower. You just get sharper and sharper and sharper. And some people are built for that and some people aren't.
Yeah, and I think that sort of stems the point of how much of it is precision flying versus showmanship, and from the crowd perspective.
Yeah, so what I quite often do is I go and fly an arresti sequence and an airshow sequence in the same flight. So, the arresti stuff is like competition practice, like flying an unlimited sequence. And so that really helps with your sharpness and your precision, which keeps the airshow sharp, which I think is important. I mean, with airshow stuff, we do change the angles here and there because, a 45 mightn't be exactly 45 because you're trying to fit it into a compact box. It mightn't be quite as big as you'd like it, especially if you've got like a 3-figure in a row sequence, like a 2 end figures and a center figure. You might have to shorten up you might have to make the 45 steeper to be able to fit it in the box. But the main thing is that that it's steeper, and you made it 10 degrees steeper on purpose, But then when you fly like competition side of things, the 45 has to be exactly 45.
Yeah, no, it's really, really great points. What do you feel that something that, aerobatic pilots or display pilots tend to underestimate with what's involved in doing what you're doing?
Unfortunately, I think some get complacent, and like I said, it's really important that you've got to that point where you can manipulate an aeroplane and keep it in front of the judges by winning advanced. That's the first part that you've got to achieve. I think there's too many people that haven't got to that point. I think there's too many people that get low-level approvals that aren't really ready yet. And some of that's because the people giving them out have got that approval when they really shouldn't have it. But you just got to realise that there's a lot involved in it, and you can't miss any of the steps, and you can't, you got to fly for when you're having your worst day, not your best day, and you can't get complacent with gate heights. If you've set for a figure that you're going to make 1,500 feet or 14, 13, whatever the number is, if it's 1,500 and you made 13, well, you can't do it. You've got to change something so that you go out at 45 degrees instead of pushing around or whatever it might be. And you've got to check that height at the top, as in a double hammerhead, in a torque roll, stall turn, avalanche. You've got to check the gate height when you're there. And if you get relaxed and start not checking your gate height, well, then now the problem is you need luck on your side. And so luck runs out. So you've got to organise it so that you don't need luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exactly that, isn't it? It's always that altitude clipping point, like I said, that gate, that you don't hit it. It's just not going to work. We've already done the math on the ground. So there's no point trying to suddenly make it work.
No, that's right. And if you go to somewhere if you've been practicing at sea level and you're going to go to somewhere with a high DA, tendency attitude becomes a massive problem if you don't allow for it. And so, if we're going to go and practice, if we're going to go and do a show somewhere where there's a high DA, like Armadale or somewhere like that, right? Well, I practice at sea level with the power back so it doesn't go. Like practice at 25 instead of running 3,000 RPM and 29 inches.
Yeah,
you got to practice the power back, which is how it's going to be when you get there. It's still going to be worse than that when you get there because you can't create the fact that the air's thinner.
the airflow, air's thickness.
But if you can fly the aeroplane with less power and get by, and it will make you realise that you need to lift it up a bit, which is what you have to do.
We'll do exactly the same thing in the simulator for multi-engine and even in the aircraft as well. That we just won't go to full power or go around to the lower power just to demonstrate it, and depending on what we're in. Just so the student can see it. So yeah, that's exactly the same concept. I love it. All right, we'll come back to air shows again in a minute, but let's have a look at this the amazing collection that you've managed to accrue. So you've mentioned yourself that you had this passion for warbirds, and I always had started on the tiger moth and chipmunk at the Aero Club, and I've had the fortune to fly CT4s and Stearmans and Skybolts and little 80% Spitfire, and so I haven't flown the full one yet, but all that sort of thing, and I absolutely love it. And now, fortunately, the DC-3. What attracted you to the warbird scene as far as obviously probably wanting to fly them to begin with, but then acquiring one? What was the first one, and what happened after that?
So it's a sort of a fun bit of a different story, I suppose. So a good friend of mine, Steve Searle, was we work together in the fiberglass industry. So, that's sort of my main business when I'm not flying is selling fiberglass and making fiberglass products. And so we were in that together. So he acquired the Avenger in the first place from, it was Bomber 21 with Forest Protection in Canada. And so he acquired that, and it went to Air Gold Coast for a lot of work. I'm not sure you'd say it was a full overhaul, but pretty much. And Mike Long led that up, and another great guy in aviation, to be honest. And Mike did a great job of it, and then it got test flown by Matt Hanley, and then Steve ended up getting another one, and I was involved around then, and then I got checked out on the Avenger, and then.
And how was that?
Yeah, it was great. Phil Frawley checked me out, actually, and because that was back when you actually needed a type endorsement on it, so back under under the Car 5 system.
Oh, Car 5 rules, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was. I mean, I hadn't had a lot of heavy tail wheel at that time, and so it was a bit of a step, but I'd done a lot of tail wheel. I was pretty experienced with the aerobatics.
I think in fairness, it's a bit hard to find some heavy tail wheel in that other than a DC-3, isn't it? It's
that's right.
Big machine.
But yeah, it was good. I flew it, and on the first landing, I realised that it's pretty heavy, and the tail will get away if you let it. Obviously, I didn't, but you got the gist that there's a bit on there, and then I ended up flying it a lot, in a pretty short time, and I was running it between Newcastle and Brisbane a bit, and starting to do some display flying with it. So then, I'd take the airshow thing started. I started with the model jets and the S1, and then I'd do model jets, S1 and Avenger, and one thing leads to another, and so we ended up buying a Wirraway. So Steve wanted to buy the Wirraway off Tony Alder, so I went up and picked that up, done the checkout, got that sorted, and flew it back. And and then unfortunately Steve got cancer and ended up on the downhill run. He was very determined to beat it, but he didn't. And so then I ended up buying. I shared the passion with him and his dream, which is that's where the whole name of the Wirraway Aviation Museum came from, and I wanted to keep it going, so I did. So I bought all these aeroplanes off the estate, and the Avenger and the Wirraway and some Stinsons, Tiger Moth. And I guess, and then so then I kept all them going, and then the airshow thing got bigger, and then I bought a Trojan, and everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
like all collections and hobbies, it just keeps happening, keeps going.
Just keeps going. Yeah. So, and then, that's what happens. It just keeps going.
It needs some help. So what is involved in maintaining a fleet like this? Like, have you got your own engineering team? Obviously, there's an incredible amount of knowledge and experience going into these things. Spare parts aren't exactly on the shelf.
No, but you learn where to get things, and you learn who to talk to around the world where you can find parts, and you got to associate yourself with some good people that are willing to help. So like we use Anderson for the engines in the US. He's been great. So we got a new Avenger engine a few years back from him, 2600, and got a new Trojan engine. So they've been really good for parts. They've been good with the 3352 in the Sea Fury, and Las Qatar Aviation effectively does all our maintenance, but we do all the prep work. So, the aeroplanes all pulled apart, and, effectively we've had a pretty good look at it, and then Matt comes over and runs his eye over it. We'll put it back together, and we got a pretty good system. It works pretty well. We got all our own spares and our own jacks and our own, really we've got our own setup.
Which you kind of need to for this sort of thing, isn't it? Just cost prohibitive.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so we do our own tyre changes and brakes and that type of thing. There's only, I wish I'd done my Lamey's ticket, to be honest, but
would have come in handy by now, but Schedule 8's not cutting it.
Yeah. But yeah, we've got a team of people that, both fly, clean, work on. There's just always so much stuff to do, even, just moving aeroplanes and hangars and stuff. It's, just full-time job. We've got a B double full of spares and parts and merchandise that goes around to the air shows. It's just, you just need enough people to keep the whole thing going.
Yeah. What is your favourite warbird that you're flying at the moment?
Oh, they're all pretty good.
It's so hard to pick, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the Spitfire. Sea Fury's good. Corsair's good. The Kitty Hawk's good.
Yeah, it's an impossible question to answer, isn't it?
Well, I'm just lucky. I'm lucky I've had the opportunity to fly a lot of really cool warbirds, and that comes from I guess being good friends with Judy Pay and becoming great friends with Ross Pay. And we're partners in the museum now, and we just share a common passion, and that friendship's just grown and grown since I guess we first met, and it's worked for both of us. So he can fly mine and I can fly his, and
yeah. Why is it so important, do you think, that we keep these amazing machines flying, apart from just our own personal selfish having fun? Why do we need to keep these machines going, and why is it so important that people support the air shows that they're flying at?
Well, they're pretty impressive machines, and they're never going to be built again. So it is our aviation history, and that's what fought for our country and our freedom in World War II. I mean, we still got airplanes from World War One, but we've got to keep the World War II machines going, so that we can. I think maybe our training, like our schooling and stuff. I guess when I was at school, we sort of talked about World War II and World War One and all that stuff. I feel like we went into it in more detail than possibly what we do now, because my kids don't seem to have the same understanding of it as what I had. So I guess it's pretty damn important to keep that heritage going, I think.
Absolutely, and especially the history that we have up here in Darwin and across Australia. But we have VJ Day down at Kamali there, and we'll fly in and have the DC3 up and running again by then, hopefully. And just sharing AVR, I think it's just such a fantastic way to share our passion with other people. It's engaging, it's entertaining. That they sound incredible, of course, which is one of the big pluses. And no, like absolutely hats off, mate. I was just in heaven when I was down at Scone there, and like you said, oh, you flew down from Darwin. I said, absolutely. Like, there's nothing up here really like that, and it's something that I was fortunate enough to have some exposure to in Perth with the Changs and the Harvard and everything there, but and then the Mustang for a short while, but just very limited. And so yeah, missed it, and I really wanted to bring my son Flynn down there as well to expose him to it, and he's just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So it is special and dear to my heart. What
Well, you think about we'll go back a few years. You think about when Cole Pay was alive, and I was doing a aerobatic display at Mudgee. It was one of my first displays. I was flying the model jets and flying my S1, and Cole Pay's doing a display in the Mustang, and then the Mustang's on the ground, and you watch it in the air, and you think, how cool is that? Wouldn't it be great to even get to sit in that one day? Now I've probably got 100 hours in that Mustang.
Yeah. No, it is. It is one of those things you never know. As like I said, people go, oh, how did you get into this? How did you get into that? So look, I just met people, I talked to people, I helped the people, not with that goal in mind, because the reality of what it is now never existed at the time. But it's just, as you said before, with the attitude and the right people, you make an imprint, and people remember down the track when there's an opportunity or something that comes up, and yeah, it opens doors.
Definitely.
Right. So moving through to an aerial display and an air show, what does it take to bring all this together? And like you said, you've got the team to look after the aircraft, you've got your merch, but we've got someone to organise toilets, generators, security, ticketing, all the website stuff, and obviously the pyrotechnics as well, a whole nother dynamic.
Yeah, that's trying not to get blown up. Well,
so there's a lot in there, but just in general, just give people an idea of what it takes to put on an air show and bring all the different pilots and everyone together, and the sort of the CASA permissions and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a deal. Well, I'll just touch on how we got to that point, if you like. So obviously you start doing displays that someone else organises, when I was flying the S1 and the jets and whatever. And then as it goes down the track, you can see some loopholes. So insurance became difficult to get, and there was becoming less and less air shows because it was getting made hard by CASA and insurance and a number of other factors, financial factors and whatever. And so then we thought, right, let's help air shows by doing the CASA paperwork. Let's get that done for them. And then we had air shows where, the promotion wasn't done well enough. So not enough people had turned up. So then we thought, righto, let's help them with promotion, So then we got the social media side cranked up, and then the whole ticketing thing came out. Like, what? Go back 15 years, and people used to just pay at the gate. Well, and now it's all online, and so then you need an online ticketing platform. So we get all that set up. So when you get the online ticketing platform, you really need a website to buy them from. So if you're going to have a website, you may as well use the website to promote the air show and put all the airplanes that are going to be flying there, and you're trying to sell, so we do all that. And so one thing leads to another, and then all of a sudden you get to a point where, a special interest group like an aero club or a council or whatever, they just call Paul Bennet Air Shows, can you just come and put on the whole show for us? And that happens a lot, around the country. A region will just ring up and say, we want to have an air show. Can you guys come and do the lot? How much will it be? And so sometimes we like most of the time, for example, the ticket sales go a long way to funding the event, and then you'll add some sponsors and stuff in. Well, there's another aspect. So if you want sponsors, you need a sponsorship prospectus. So then we do the sponsorship prospectus for them. And so the whole package, that's just been a work in progress over 20 years, I suppose. And now it's got to, a great stage where it's an easy phone call, ring up, we give you a number, and If you can afford it, we do it, and if you can't, we don't. But normally there's a balance of finding a way around it. So, like we might collect the ticket money, we might charge a performance fee, for example, with all our aeroplanes, but we collect the ticket money and then give them the ticket money, and then effectively they pay us out of the ticket money and the sponsorship that they got. So, normally it works out pretty well. So, it's at least cost neutral. And a lot of towns don't necessarily do it to make a fortune out of. They do it because it brings people into town, which then the town makes money.
Spending elsewhere, accommodation and
so you think about like your experience in Scone. Well, Scone was obviously booked out. Muswellbrook was booked out. Singleton was booked out.
Yeah.
All the way up the valley to Armidale's, Tamworth's booked out. So that's really good for the region. And all those people are eating food in town. So that's good for the region. They're buying petrol and diesel in town. Everyone's spending money in town. Well, that's what it's all about. If you can keep having events and bringing people to your region, well, then it's great. And if we, on our side, if we can inspire the next generation of aviators, well, then I guess we've done a good job. But back to your original question where, what's involved in this? Well, there's a lot involved in it, and it starts, like a year in advance. So, we might, if we're doing the ticketing, we want to get the tickets on sale. We want to get the website built. We want to get all the social media platforms and getting a following on those social media platforms so it really gets out there. We might be contracting like Bishop Billboards, for example, to do the billboards for us, and we want to get signage around town, and we want to get, for example, like the local tourism places to help be promoting it. And then while that's going on in the background, Glenn and I are working on the CASA application of how we're going to run the show, just like figuring out the parking, the display line, figuring out the people that are going to be involved. So then we're negotiating with, other pilots. So, for example, if we're doing a show in Victoria, and it's like budget's the wrong word, but like, let's say it's a show that could afford one Mustang and one Kitty Hawk and one Spitfire instead of having multiples. So like we might put in an Air Force application through JOS in Canberra so that we can try and get the 100 Squadron involved.
100 Squadron over. Yeah.
You might get a Spitfire and a Mustang or a Hudson or whatever. And then we might try and, like, if it's say in Melbourne, we might get the Eastgate Mustang or Doug Hamilton's Mustang or something like that instead of me taking one from Scone. It doesn't make sense, We'll take all the things that no one else has got, like the Avenger and the Sea Fury and the Wolf Pits and the Edge and the Sky Aces and stuff like that. But we'll try and use the other operators, give them an opportunity to do stuff. It doesn't make sense me taking an aeroplane that someone's got in Melbourne to go and fly in front of them. You may as well use their aeroplane, or, Judy pays, she said before, okay, well, you use my aeroplane then, so I've done several displays in her Mustang, for example. So,
and you get plenty of support for that. Everyone's keen and willing to be involved in that.
Yeah, everyone wants it. Everyone always wants it to happen,
which is what you need. Awesome.
Yeah, but it ends up being a lot of work, So, and then if you multiply, like we're telling you about one air show there, but then when you've got 12 on the go at once, that becomes a lot of work. So, we've got Kate flat out doing ticketing and helping on the documentation side for, she might be working on the parking plan somewhere, and, we've got Jack doing social media, and we've got Luke doing, he might be working on sponsorship prospectus, or, there's just so much going on the whole time. It feels like, we've got 10 people. It feels like if we had 20, they'd still all be flat out. But you just got to keep chipping away, getting it done, and do it, as professionally and accurately as you can.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You only just have one go, and then the 2-year repeat's already just around the corner, but you've got all the other ones in between.
And the good thing is with the repeats, it's a repeat. So now you've got the documentation, what worked and what didn't. It's really important after an event to document everything that especially didn't work as well as what you would have liked, so that you can change it so that you don't have a rerun. And then, so Scone's we've done 3 of them. So Scone's getting better and better and better. And, Shell Harbour's, it was pretty good. So it's getting better. And, they're all getting better because we've done a few, and then then we've got these new ones on the go that we haven't done before. So they're a work in progress, and then once we do them for a second time, they'll be better as well.
Absolutely. Oh, look, and that's a hats off to you, mate. Because, like I said to you, like this Scone was just once the clock struck 10, I think it was. It just didn't stop. There was something in starting. There was something taxiing. There's something taking off, flying, landing, starting again. And so for the crowd and everybody, you're not sitting there looking at your clock going, when's it home time? There was just always something to look at. And certainly as a photographer, it was frustrating because you're getting FOMO of missing something exciting from everywhere. But just also remembering to put the camera down and just take it in as well, because that's really what it's all about. And it's really great to be part of and to see, and look forward to going again. So let's talk about the boom factor, and obviously we've had things like the Wall of Fire in the States and all that, but we've seen it at Avalon. But putting it on yourself, what's involved with something like that? How many liters and
we end up using
the safety side.
So, like I think Scone, we use 10,000 liters. With over the weekend with the Wall of Fires, because we did a few of them. And
this diesel, was it?
No, it's petrol.
Petrol, yeah.
Petrol and avgas. So Southern Cross Fireworks do that for us. They're just the best at it. They do Avalon as well. Become good friends with Tony, and we just call him up and he comes and does it. And it sort of makes it we've briefed those guys on how to get in and out of aeroplanes. They understand the cockpits and stuff. So if anything goes down out there, they've got a good handle on how to rescue someone. And so because they end up, if you have an aeroplane that ends up basically near the pyro box, they're going to be the first one on the scene. So it helps if they've got a pretty good handle on the rescue side of things as well. But they just do a good job. We've never had anything go off when it shouldn't have. They get how the display works. They get the whole thing. We've got good comms with them, from ground to air comms, and it's just a system that works. So I don't like chopping and changing. I just don't want to do it with anyone else because these guys are just good at it. And so, approval wise, either us or Tony can get his approval to actually, like the pyro stuff. We always put it in our CASA application so that, so CASA understand how we're going to go about it, when we're going to go about it. And obviously everything's got to be dealt with on a risk assessment basis. But it does work pretty well, and it's a good spectacle for the crowd.
Yeah, it absolutely adds that dynamic to it. And I think I asked you when I interviewed you in Scone there, like what is there a bit of a shockwave there, and does that impact the aircraft much when you're doing that knife edge pass there?
Yeah, and that there's they won't fire it if I'm too close. If they're sure I'm too close, they're just not going to fire it. But yeah, you do get a shockwave. You sort of, it's like a delay, when you're coming through knife edge, you think, when's it going to be? When's it going to be? And then bang, it's coming, but it still
gets you.
It's like the aeroplane sort of moves, and you can feel the heat. There's a bit going on, but I guess I've done it so many times now, I'm just used to it.
You're ready. And with that knife edge pass, I've had a couple of people ask, because you're always left wing down, irrespective of which way you're going. And then, do you want to just take people through that with the torque and the prop rotation? And
so I guess most people have heard about, pilots, I guess, understand torque, gyroscopic precession, and so because of all that, it feels, so as part of the gyroscopic precession, it wants to go, it wants to pull the nose down. And so in this case, it means it wants to pull the nose away. So it helps you be able to hold the elevator back. But what you're effectively doing is you're boxing the air between the top and bottom wing and bouncing it off the side of the fuselage. You're now using the rudder as the elevator, and the elevator as the rudder. And so now the stall stick position side of things doesn't really come into it as much because you're not using the wings to fly, this way. You're using them this way effectively as a stabilizer. And so you don't really have any like you can't now store the fuselage because there's nothing to create angle of attack except for the side of the fuselage. And so it's a whole different concept of, how the aeroplane flies. And that theory all changes. If you have an engine failure and now you've got to slip back out and land, well, then you're going back to a conventional aeroplane again, but it's not conventional while it's knife edge. That's slow speed like that, So it just changes the whole concept. And that's why biplanes do it better than monoplanes, because you've got the top and bottom wing to box the air in the fuselage. I mean, yes, there's some gaps in there for sure, but that's effectively what you're doing. And you sort of need to do it low so that you're in ground effect. And then the ground effect's what helps you. If you had to do which we've done, simulated engine failure and land, you sort of need the ground effect to help with the slow speed, because effectively you're going slower than what your normal landing speed would be, just because the concept's all different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it looks fantastic, and like I said, there's always design and thought behind it. It's not just that, and it's why I don't know. I think some people get a bit upset with the concept of stunt plane and doing stunts, and that was totally loose, But it's so calculated and deliberate and purposeful. It's not just chucking it around to make it do something, is it? There's always purpose behind it and reason.
There's always purpose, a lot of thought, and a lot of planning gone into everything. Even though it looks like, you see, look at this cowboy. You see and hear all that stuff. Once upon a time, I used to, get frustrated with all that stuff. Now I just don't care because it's obvious that, people that comment on some of that stuff just don't understand. I got criticised because, one of the China air shows that I went to, Skip and I did side by side knife edge takeoffs, and they just assume that they know who's leading and who's not, but they don't understand that we just didn't wake up one day and go bang, do it. No. It's all been planned, and that's how you do things properly.
Yeah. No, that's it, and that's what everyone needs to understand. And I think even just from a bit of logic, the CASA's not just going to approve some random people to go do random things. It's a lot to it, and it's not in your interest as well to have the threat of all this being plugged. As I say, it only takes one person, and it's all over. So we want to make sure this is all happening and done safe. So moving forward, with the Sky Aces and obviously having the great joy of teaching Jett and having him part of the team now, how is that dynamic and that experience and moving forward? As you said to me the other day, you're not going to be throwing your brain around your skull forever. Eventually, you're going to tone it down a bit and do something a bit more graceful in the warbirds. So what's the sort of the future hold there?
Yeah, well, it's really good to be able to do things with your kids. So having Jett flying on the wing with us is I guess that's a father and son dream come true, isn't it? In a lot of ways for the father and the son. I know that's Jett wanted that his whole life growing up. You can he doesn't say it every day, but you can tell that he wants it. Every time we're at the airport, Rachel used to work for Qantas, and I'd have Jett quite a lot of the time. He'd be out here in the pram, or when he was walking and he was young, and he'd always be out here sitting in aeroplanes, making aeroplane noises, pretending to do snap rolls and whatever. And then, we always said to him, well, when your legs can touch the pedals, mate, we'll teach you to fly. And that's what happened. And so he went solo in our flying school over at Cessnock at Aero Hunter. And then that was at 15. And then between 15 and 16, I did all these aerobatic, tail wheel, constant speed, retractable. And then he went solo in a 2-seat pit special on his 16th birthday, and hasn't really looked back. So then he was competing, and he competed in sportsman, and intermediate, still competes in advanced now. He's won a couple of advanced comps, and so he's going well. Him and Riley are always, first and second, and very close with each other. And it's been enjoyable coaching them at aerobatics and getting them up to, to be able to fly at a high standard. And then to introduce Riley into the Sky Aces was a great pleasure. From a little kid who I know that he's been watching me, since he was a little kid. I could tell from early days that he effectively wanted to be me, and so now I've played a part in trying to help a bit of that dream come true for him, and him flying at Shell Harbour was a dream come true, and he had all his family and his mates there, and it was great. It was a real achievement, and like you said earlier, people don't realise how much work goes into that behind the scenes. It's not just we woke up one day and decided we'll go and fly at the Shell Harbour Airshow. It's years of training that led to that point of achievement, and you've got to keep that going. Now he's up here every weekend practicing for Unlimited. Wants to go good at Unlimited at the Nationals. Thinks he's going to beat me.
It's on.
We'll see. But yeah, like having the family involved is great. Coaching them is great. And then, where we're going to go with it, I guess there's, I've probably got a little bit left yet. I'm not, like, Jett's not ready to fly the wolf pitch yet. I just know, at the point he could fly it, no problem. But it's a real handful, and in the wrong, what am I trying to say? In sort of like a little bit too junior hands, it's not the machine for him, I'll get him right in it, but when he first flies it, he won't like it. He'll go, right, that's cool, I flew the wolf pitch, but he sort of, I just know he won't like it. So Glenn flew it once, and he just come back and said, that's impossible to fly, it's ridiculous. So, he'll have a go at it soon. But then, there's going to come a time where I won't end up doing the hard solo arrows. I'll probably still lead the Sky Aces for a while, and then and Jett will do the hard arrows in it, and then there'll come a time when I probably won't lead the Sky Aces either, and maybe Glenn will or whatever, I don't know, and then I'll just fly warbirds. But I'm not ready for that yet. I'm still flying well. I know I'm, at the moment, I've still got it. So while I've still got it, I want to stop before I start to get rusty or not as sharp or whatever. And in some ways, that's why I keep competing in the competition stuff at the Nationals and wherever I can fit in a comp, because it does keep you sharp, and it does. It's hard work, but it does keep you on top of it. And if you can't really get through Unlimited, like for me, well, then I'll probably tone it back a bit, I suppose. But at the moment, I'm enjoying it, and I'm not finding it too difficult or anything. So I'll just keep going for the moment.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a really great point for younger pilots listening as well. Like you've got to be aware of your own limits and experience and competency, and trying, like we're always offered new aircraft. Oh yeah, I want to fly that. But you got to go, actually, you know what? I haven't flown that before. That's a bit too much. Like I know I could fly it, but I want to fly it well and I want to know it. So I'd rather do a check flight with somebody and pick their brain and do all that sort of stuff. And just having that mediation of where the line is before we sort of go outside our own comfort levels and competency levels. I think it's really important to do that. And like you say, keeping yourself in check with comps and things, and listening to others as well. If someone starts saying, mate, you look like you're slipping a little bit, it's so important, especially in what you're doing, to take note.
Well, that's a good thing that we've had with like Green Graham, operations manager, and myself. We've both flown Unlimited now for a long time, and so we coach each other, and we also coach each other at the airshow stuff. So we're always watching each other. If there was something that either of us didn't like, we'll say something about it, and I'm always happy to pull someone up if it's not right. Sometimes it's not the most comfortable thing that you really want to do, but I probably learnt a few things out of Tom and Pip's accident that I don't want to see happen again. So, I guess I found it hard back then because I was the junior, but now I'm not on the senior one. So, knowing what happened to them, you can't get rusty or complacent, and you got to know where your limitations are. And confidence is something that you need to have, but overconfidence is dangerous.
That's right.
You got to have confidence in your own ability that you know you can do it right. But yeah, I've seen a few people that are a bit too overconfident, and that's
Well, it's when that confidence slides to cockiness, and we see it with
that doesn't work.
Racing drivers and all those sort of sports there where things can go wrong very, very quick. It's so important.
Well, there's plenty of drivers that have got that, but when they hit the fence, it doesn't really matter. They just get another car and keep going. But for us, when you hit the ground, you don't keep going.
That's right. The room for error is less forgiving.
Yeah.
So what's coming up for the team next? You're heading overseas again shortly?
Yeah, well, I've got the red aeroplane overseas, so I'm heading over to do some practice in that before Oshkosh, and then fly Oshkosh, and then.
And what's Oshkosh like compared to something, say, Avalon? How's for those that haven't been there, and what's the dynamics and the atmosphere and all that like? Is it the same? Is it different?
You've been to Avalon and you think Avalon's big, that's like a 30-second of Oshkosh.
Oshkosh's incredible. I went in 91, so I haven't been back since. Definitely want to go back, but just 20 of everything, isn't it?
Oh, it's big. Yeah, I get the last couple of years they probably haven't had as many warbirds as maybe what they once had. Just I think. For them, they've thought the fuel price is expensive. For me, I thought it was really cheap. But they've still got a lot of great things, and all the best rebuilds always end up at Oshkosh. The P38 and the P47 Thunderbolt, and the Bearcat, I guess those three I just mentioned. We don't have any here in Australia, which obviously would like. And so,
yeah, lightning would be amazing.
You see things in Oshkosh that you don't get to see in other parts of the world.
That's right.
I've been really lucky that in my career that I've flown a lot of places in the world and seen a lot of stuff. And flying legends in the UK, and doing air shows in South Korea and China and New Guinea and New Zealand and the US. But yeah, I'll get They talk about the US being the biggest and the best, and it is. No good saying it's not. So when it comes to aviation, and the aviation in America is just so good. Flying from A to B, when I was there last year, I flew my wolf pitch it came into Atlanta. I flew from Atlanta to Louisiana. I was in Louisiana for a few weeks, and then I flew from Louisiana to Oshkosh, and then after Oshkosh, I flew from back to send it out of California. So I flew from Oshkosh to Bozeman, stayed in Bozeman, and then Bozeman to California the next day. It's a long way, a couple of thousand miles, but it was just a pleasure to fly there, and a pleasure to get flight following and all the controlled airspace stuff. They're just great. They just make it easy. Over here, we just make it hard. I think US people coming to Australia would be disappointed, unfortunately. I'm not sure why we make it hard, but over here we do. But yeah, US is awesome.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, all the best with that, and like I said, hope it really comes together for you. And again, that networking and maybe bringing back a new manoeuvre or two in the next couple of years. Yeah,
I'm always working on new stuff, that's for sure. And like going to Oshkosh helped me get the Hartzell sponsorship, and things like that. They just end up making a big difference over a period of time, and after I flew to LA, I went and met Ken from Lycon, who builds my engines, and we've been good friends on opposite sides of the world for a long time, and and he's helped me, and I can always call him with problems or whatever, and his service has been amazing. But once you go and meet him in person, then it just gets better and better and better, and those relationships is what helps you be able to do a good job. Like if I didn't have the engine that I've got, and he uses me as a little bit of a trial as well, because I fly him pretty hard, and he might give me an engine that's a little bit different to see how it goes, and like this new motor that I've got now, the flat tappet motor, it's the best the Wolf Bits has ever gone. It's just great. So a lot of those type of things, by going to Oshkosh, it really helps, with sponsors, Dynon's there and Avplan's there, and
just a wealth of knowledge, isn't it? And finding the right person.
Yeah, Icon, like they're all there, and you can, Concord batteries, Whelan products. It's just all the people that help us. They're all there.
Yeah, put a face to a name and everything. So it's perfect word, isn't it? Yeah. Magic, mate. All right. Well, look, let's start to wrap things up. So after everything you've achieved, what still excites you about aviation?
Oh, I still love it. I still have that passion for, even I only just landed from Darwin yesterday. So like yesterday afternoon, I was sick of it, but now the next day,
ready for more.
Yeah, I want to go flying again. So, like 10 and a half hours back from Darwin's a fair mission in a Wolf Bits. They're not, it's not the most comfortable machine in the world, but I still love I just still love being in the air. I still love the three-dimensional aspect of it. I still love invention you're just trying to work on new maneuvers. I still love perfecting the maneuvers that I've got that I do well. I'm still, I'm teaching a guy at the moment to fly the two-seat Spitfire, so I'm enjoying that. I do want to get a Bearcat. That's on my shopping list. So I'm hoping that in not too distant future I can achieve that. But yeah, I don't know.
Like the big ones.
Yeah, I'm enjoying doing some air shows in the US. To be honest, I do enjoy that aspect of it, and Rachel likes traveling as well. So that it's nice to, it's nice to see the world a little bit. We hadn't been in New York, so we went to New York while we were at the Atlantic City Air Show, and you just meet more people, and you get to see, people who you've been friends with on social media for 10 years or 20 years or whatever. You might have only crossed paths with them once, and you get to see them again. And I sort of like all that stuff. But in saying that, that I'm enjoying the American air show side of things, I've spent so much time and effort building the Australian air show circuit, if you like. I'm not going to let that lapse, So, we've got a lot of things in the pipeline for next year. Next year will probably be the biggest air show season that we've had in Australia, I think. And especially, now that we're doing stuff in Perth, and we're doing stuff in Darwin, and, now we've done every state in Australia multiple times. It's, you can definitely feel it's growing. And I guess I sort of always wanted to, I thought the V8s were a great thing, like a travelling circus. It goes from town to town. I sort of wanted to make something like that in aviation, and it feels like we're getting there now. Feels like we're getting to a similar type of campaign. We have similar numbers turn up at air shows, and quite often we have more. And so, I think everything's going pretty well. Want to do more flying with Jett and Riley, and I want to introduce them into warbirds, and I've started to, but I want to sort of finish that off so that they can start displaying some of the warbirds. Got a lot of, I guess all those sort of things, they might sound sort of basic, but they're achievements that I want to achieve. I want to make sure that I set them up for a good future, and, set up, in some ways this, the American thing and the China and South Korean thing will, hopefully Jett will take that over, at some point. And then, we'll end up with the Sky Aces in America, and I don't know. I don't know where it'll all go, but just keep pushing forward as hard as we can.
Just got to have goals and ideas, don't you? And
yeah, yeah. I do like achieving things and and getting it done. So I guess in the immediate future, it's just keeping building on the airshow market in Australia.
No, look, I think it's great, and as we said, and as I talked to a lot of the guys at Scone there, just trying to keep everything happening now, but encouraging that younger generation to come through to fly, but also to maintain. We need to pass on that knowledge. There's only so much you can learn out of a manual. The rest of it comes from hands-on. And as we know, in any airplane, they have the gremlins, and we all know different types of airplanes like to do different things. And you have to just get experience and exposure to that. And that's so crucial to keeping these airplanes flying and up in the sky. So they're flying museums rather than static ones.
Yeah, I'm not into static museums. I mean, I'll obviously go to them and have a look, but my museum needs to be a flying one, that's for sure. So I want to keep them going. And yeah, like, again, in the US, it feels like just about everyone's a lamey, and in Australia, we struggle to get them. So
yeah,
I think we need to be having a look at the systems and trying to fix it. It's pretty obvious it's been broken over the years. So I'd love to try and fix that, and be nice to, I guess, making things easier, not harder, would be a good thing to achieve in Australia.
Just help find some solutions.
Yeah.
All right, mate. And look, final question for young aviators out there listening, or older ones, because get to this, but someone wanting to sort of follow a similar path, get into aerobatics and things, what would you give them as some advice? I think we've probably covered most of it, but just in a...
Yeah, I'd be going down, if you let's say you haven't started aerobatics yet, I'd go for a ride in an aerobatic machine with someone pretty capable and get them to show you some basic aerobatics, see if you like it. And if you're that way inclined and you like it, well, then go down the route of getting your ratings and start competing at the Australian Aerobatic Club events. There's Queensland state champs, Victorian state champs, New South Wales state champs. All the states have got them except Darwin.
WALAC and COLAC and all those things.
Yeah. I think that's the way to do it. And if you can, if you become that way inclined that you really want to compete, try and align yourself with someone that will, you don't even have to have your own aeroplane. If let's say you come from NT. Well, if you want to travel and you want to learn and you can spend a week here and there, come down with me, go to Phil Unicum, Pete Townsend down in Camden. We'll all take you to the aerobatic championships and if you come with me, you'll win. If you go with the others, you might not. But, I'll push you pretty hard to get pretty good pretty quick. I'm not into taking their money. I'm into just getting them up to speed as quick as possible and as safely as possible. And, when we go to the aerobatic championships, it normally works out pretty well. We have someone in sportsman, someone in intermediate, some, a few in advanced, and only me and Glenn Unlimited. Well, it's been many times we're working together. Every category. All the guys I've trained, they're winning every category. So, that's a sense of achievement, I suppose, for me when that happens. It's pretty good. But that's the way to get into it, through the Australian Aerobatic Club, and competing is definitely the way to do it. And if you want to end up in warbirds, well, that's still a good way to start. People want to get to the top before they've been at the bottom.
Yeah.
And you don't wake up tomorrow and become an A-grade V8 driver. You don't wake up tomorrow and go to Formula One. So I don't see the big deal with going through the apprenticeship and doing your apprenticeship properly.
Yeah.
I get,
and like you said, doing it well.
Yeah, well,
because you can fly the extra, but to flick it inverted and stop wings perfectly level and not have the wobble and the shakes and all that, that took time.
It takes
and
a bit.
Now I know if I go back into it now, I won't be able to do it again. It's all gone.
And you sort of need you need a coach that gets that can help you with it, to short track it. Because when you teach yourself that stuff, you tend to teach yourself wrong for a while, And then once someone points out to you that you need to do it this way,
Yeah.
now the problem is you've got to untrain what you've been doing and retrain the other way.
Yeah.
It takes three times longer. So you're better off just going to someone who you know is good at it and learn that way in the first place.
Yeah, definitely seeking out an industry expert is definitely the way to go. And I think that goes with any training, isn't it? You want to get it right the first time.
Yeah, you want to do IFR, go to someone who you know is great at IFR. It's got a good track record. You know, you want to do aerobatics, go to someone that's got a great track record in aerobatics. I would, you think that's fairly straightforward, but it's not.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you, mate. Look, thank you so much. Fantastic chat. Like I said, I know we're going to go on deeper in so many different areas, but I know you're a busy man, so I won't take any more time. The jets are all blasting off in the background again. It's up here, all these exercises going on. But look, all the best in Oshkosh, mate. I'll be watching very closely and hopefully can get you up the Blue Angels or something in a formation shoot. I'd love to see that.
Nice,
that'd be awesome. And look, we'll keep in touch and keep talking about the other things we're talking about. And all the best, mate. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Trent. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Cheers. Thanks again to Paul for joining me there. Fantastic chat and so much more coming up on the calendar. If you go check out paulbennetairshows.com.au, you'll be able to read up all about the team, the aircraft, the displays, and plan your airshow calendar for the rest of this year and next year. There are airshows popping up all over the place with just general flying days, but also aerial displays. Of course, building up to Avalon next year, the Hunter Valley Airshow in Cessnock, and so much more coming up, which will be added to the calendar in due process. And look, I can tell you, it is a fantastic show. Each one's slightly different. The aircraft are fantastic, and just to be amongst it all, if you haven't been before, it's just well worth it. Get your cameras out and share it online. The biggest thing with all this is, of course, helping ensure the longevity of our industry and the importance of these aircraft flying, be they warbirds or more modern aircraft. We need to make sure that we all keep it affordable, keep aircraft flying, giving us all opportunities to talk shop and enjoy it amongst our peers. All right, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, blue skies, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.